The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is a very august body, and a new study, very large study conducted for that institution, suggests that expectant mothers living near wells that are being fracked are more likely to have a high-risk pregnancy. One of the authors of the report joins us now. It's Dr. Joan Casey. Hello, Dr. Casey.
Hi there.
When you conducted this study, how many pregnancies did you actually look at, and over what sort of a period?
We looked at about 9,000 mothers who delivered around 11,000 babies between 2009 and 2013 in this area.
And in this area being the area of the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's a large shale formation in the U.S. that's now producing the largest volume of unconventional gas in the U.S. And by 2013, there were over 7,000 wells drilled there. And it's just an area half the size of the UK.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective, doesn't it? Now, when you looked at these women, you were looking for what? I mean, what questions were you asking?
Well, we were curious if women living in communities near to the areas where wells are being fracked might be at an elevated risk for adverse birth outcomes, and also in terms of high-risk pregnancies in themselves.
And what then did you find?
Well, among these women, we looked at a time-varying exposure throughout their whole pregnancy to all the wells in the state, and we found that women in the highest quartile of exposure to the fracking had about a 40% increased risk of giving birth preterm compared to those living the farthest away. And we also saw, as you mentioned, that increased risk of a high-risk pregnancy in women most highly exposed.
So your conclusion was that women who lived closest to fracked wells were more likely to have a difficult pregnancy. Is that right?
Yeah, that was something that came out of our study. And it's not necessarily just about how close they live, but also about how intense the activity was at those wells drilled near their home. So we looked at a lot of other things, like how deep the wells were, the volume of natural gas that was being produced, other things that we thought would be related to their exposure.
Yeah. Did you have a control group? Because could you correlate the number of premature births among these women with women who didn't live near fracked wells somewhere else?
So that is what we did. We looked at women that lived far away, that were still in the same health system, but didn't have the same exposure to the wells during the same time frame. And then go ahead.
No, please carry on.
Well, so I just also wanted to mention, we looked at it another way. Women living in communities that were going to have future exposure to wells, but at the time of their births had no exposure. We didn't see an association in those women either, as we would expect if it was just something strange about the communities in which they lived that was causing these outcomes. So it really gave us a thought that this might actually be connected to the fracking that came into their communities.
And what sort of data were you looking at for the wells? You're looking at, I think you said how deep they were, but also you're looking at all the preparatory activity, were you?
Yeah, we had quite a bit of information on the wells. We knew when the well pads themselves were developed, which is a pretty large process that involves hundreds to thousands of truck trips coming in to clear a well pad. And then we looked at the start of the date when wells were drilled, so they're going down hundreds of meters underground and then going horizontally. And then there's the injection of millions of liters of water that actually fracks the shale formation, which releases the gas. So we had the timing of each of those events, and then we also had the volume of natural gas that was produced during the woman's pregnancy. So we added that up to create a cumulative exposure to this development process.
Every study, I think, that comes out about fracking tends to be used politically sooner or later, doesn't it? I presume you're very well aware of the potential for this one.
I am. I'm familiar with that, just that very thing happening. So yes, certainly. And like other studies, ours also had limitations, but it does seem like there's a growing body of literature linking this industry to adverse birth outcomes.
Well, we thank you for your time, Dr. Casey, and it's of interest in the UK as well, as you know. Thank you.
Yeah, very glad to be here. Thanks a lot.
Dr. Joan Casey joined us from University of California in Berkeley, but when she conducted the work, she was under the aegis of the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. And it's just after 2:30.